Call of Duty tries to put you in the action. The goal of every game is to imagine yourself in the shoes of the player character, which should be easy enough. The game is always in first person, the cutscenes are almost always just satellite footage while your commander rattles on about the geopolitics of the conflict. I don't care. Just let me shoot the bad people. I don't need to understand the ins and outs of this war. The CIA told me to go do this thing in this foreign country and kill these people, so I'm doing it. You know, the military recruitment works best if you can imagine yourself as the machine gun wielding badass. There's one other tactic the franchise almost always employs: the silent protagonist. This is pretty prevalent across the entire first-person shooter genre. A few COD games like Infinite Warfare and Black Ops 2 have broken this mold, but it's largely the standard. To prevent the player from getting lost and helping them keep track of the events of the story, your character is almost always accompanied by one or two other fully voiced soldiers. In Modern Warfare 2, you have Sergeant Foley. In Ghost, your brother David guides you through the levels. In World at War, you have Roebuck. These end up being the characters that stick with the players years later. I mean, Ghost became the face of Call of Duty as a whole, and if you replay MW2, he's barely even in that game. And sure, you play a Soap in Modern Warfare, and he's an iconic character, but no one gave a fuck about him until he became a companion character in Modern Warfare 2. You form a kind of bond with these characters as they guide you through various situations, and oftentimes die alongside your self-insert character. Griggs dies saving Soap, Ghost dies with Roach. Shout out to Sandman, Truck, and Grinch. I feel like people overlook these guys, and where the fuck was Frost when they all died? Did he just stay home that day? You've probably noticed I neglected to mention probably the most famous character COD ever produced, Captain Price. And yes, that's because he's going to be 50% of this video, while the other half will be focusing on Viktor Reznov. You clicked the video, you saw the title, you already know this. In the past couple days, I've been binging the Call of Duty campaigns, and I was really captivated by the motivation and philosophy of these two characters, and how despite their many differences, they kind of represent two sides of the same coin. A quote from Captain Price summarizes both of their life journeys.
How quickly they forget that all it takes to change the course of history is the will of a single man.
But before we get into the video though, I'm gonna do the YouTuber thing and ask you guys to like and subscribe and comment. I am literally on the brink of reaching YouTube partner, and I'm hoping this video will be the last little push I need to make it. So if you can, any and all engagement really helps, and it's much appreciated. It means so much. But back to the video, because that's why you're here. The entire story of the Modern Warfare universe starts in 1996 and is brought about by a single shot. A young Lieutenant Price and his Captain Macmillan are deployed to Pripyat and are given one mission: assassinate arms dealer Imran Zakhaev. Like Viktor Reznov, who we will discuss later, Zakhaev was born into the Soviet Union. After its collapse, he viewed the new leadership as weak and criticized them for bowing down to the Western powers. He founded a group called the Ultranationalists with the goal of overthrowing the government and restoring Russia's power. He funded his organization by trading spent fuel rods to foreign powers in exchange for money and weapons. Zakhaev himself was in Pripyat for this deal, along with his protege Vladimir Makarov and Yuri. After making their way through Pripyat, Price and Macmillan got into position where Price interrupted the deal by firing a .50 caliber sniper round that took Zakhaev's arm clean off. Although Makarov and Yuri got Zakhaev to safety, leading the world to think he was dead, while he continued to run the Ultranationalists from behind the scenes. Price's story continues in the late 2000s, when Zakhaev finally resurfaces in an attempt to overthrow the Russian government. Price's rivalry reignites, and in an attempt to locate Zakhaev, Price makes the decision to capture his son, hoping he'll give up his father. When Price and his men surround the son, he shoots himself rather than be captured, which makes things personal for Zakhaev. After stopping a nuclear missile attack by Zakhaev, Price and his men are attacked, leading to the death of Price's right-hand man Gaz and U.S. Marine Griggs. Unable to take the shot himself, Price slides his firearm to new recruit Soap, who uses it to kill Zakhaev. Even with their leader dead and their nuclear attack stopped, the Ultra-Nationalist Party still manages to take power, and as the old saying goes, history is written by the victors. In this new world, Imran Zakhaev is a hero in his home country, and all record of his misdeeds have been erased. At some point after Zakhaev's death, Captain Price is captured by Vladimir Makarov, Zakhaev's student, who locks him up in a Russian gulag. But Price is assumed dead by Soap and the rest of the world, left to rot with no rescue attempt on the way. 5 years after the end of the First Modern Warfare, Makarov escalates conflict with the US and Russia. Under the command of General Shepard, Soap, along with Ghost and Roach, go to the Russian Gulag to free a prisoner there that they learn Makarov has a deep hatred for, unaware that it's Price. Soap reunites with Price and returns the gun he used to kill Zakhaev. Price and General Shepard's Task Force 141 managed to turn the tides against the Russian invasion of the US, but Price is betrayed by Shepard, who helped instigate the war for his own reasons. Ghost and Roach are executed by Shepard, leaving Price and Soap stranded. Without any other options, Price cuts a deal with Makarov, offering to kill Shepard in exchange for his location. Price and Soap kill their way through Shepard's compound before catching him alone when he overpowers them. Soap pulls Shepard's knife out of his own chest and throws it into Shepard's eye, killing him, now leaving only one loose end: Makarov. Tracking him down is made much harder when Price and Soap are branded as terrorists and wanted by the UN. After Soap recovers, he and Price are joined by Yuri, who defected from Zakhaev's ultranationalists but keeps that part of his past secret. The three of them begin a hunt for Makarov, who is orchestrating a third world war, launching chemical attacks and disrupting peace talks. During an attempt to kill Makarov, Soap is badly injured once again, this time succumbing to his wounds. Soap's last words warning Price that Yuri knows Makarov before Price leaves the gun he used to kill Zakhaev on his chest. Price beats Yuri, but after hearing his story, chooses to let him live, and the two of them continue hunting Makarov. They eventually find him after the war, and the two of them go to kill him. During the attack, Yuri is killed, and Price manages to hang Makarov, but his own fate is left open-ended. In the world of Black Ops, things began in the days of World War II, during the German siege of Stalingrad. While Reznov was a sergeant in the army, his father played Soviet nationalist music on his violin as an act of defiance until the Nazis found him and executed him. The siege of Stalingrad eventually escalated into a battle, and Reznov would spend this time hunting high-ranking German officials. During the battle, a Russian commander named Dragovich and his right-hand man Kravchenko failed to uphold a promise to reinforce Reznov's unit, resulting in a massacre that wiped out all his men except for Private Dmitry Petrenko, your player character in World at War. 3 years later, the war is coming to a close, the German forces are being pushed back to their capital, and Reznov and Petrenko are leading the charge. Reznov has been consumed by revenge for his father, his hometown, and his men who were massacred. Hatred and revenge drive all of his actions as he begins to execute surrendered and unarmed enemies without a second thought. After fighting their way through the German Capitol building, Petrenko is shot and nearly killed by a German soldier. Reznov cuts him apart violently with a machete, and he helps Petrenko raise the Soviet flag over the Capitol. A few months later, the war has ended, and Reznov and his men are assigned under the command of Dragovich and Kravchenko. Reznov still hates both of them for allowing his men to die in Stalingrad at the start of the war. The team is being sent into the Arctic to capture Nazi scientist Friedrich Steiner, who wants to defect to the Soviet Union. After a tough battle, Steiner kills his own men guarding him, allowing him to surrender to the Russians. Steiner takes the Russians to a nearby frozen-over boat where he was developing a weapon called Nova 6. Reznov, Petrenko, and his men lead the way through an abandoned boat as Steiner explains that Nova 6 is a deadly chemical gas he had developed. After uncovering it, Dragovich has his soldiers turn on Reznov and his men. They are all forced into chambers on the boat to be test subjects for the gas. Reznov has to watch as his only friend, Dmitry Petrenko, and anyone who loyal to him are all slaughtered once again. Watching him die, Reznov laments that he wished Petrenko would have died back in Berlin trying to raise the flag over the Capitol building.
Dragovich wanted to see the effects of the poison firsthand. It was also an opportunity to remove a thorn in his side. I had long known of their distrust. What kind of men they were. It was a betrayal I should have foreseen. Dmitry Petrenko was a hero. He deserved a hero's death. Instead of giving his life for the glory of the motherland, he died for nothing. Like an animal. He should have died in Berlin. As I watched my closest friend die, it became clear we were not the only ones seeking the German weapons.
This is, in my opinion, the greatest narrative moment in Call of Duty history. In case you don't know, Reznov is voiced by Gary Oldman, one of the most acclaimed actors alive, and he completely sells this moment. I can't speak highly enough of this part. The writing, the performance, the visuals, and the creepy underlying score, it's just masterfully done, and it sticks with you. And it just tears down any barriers between the audience and Reznov. Like, from here on out, you just completely understand Reznov better than you do most characters. The British end up attacking the boat to claim the Nova 6, and in the confusion, Reznov manages to escape his chamber. He sinks the boat, but is captured once again by Dragovich, who has him sent to a Russian gulag, similar to Price, where he is forced to work for the next 16 years. In 1961, CIA agent Alex Mason was captured by Fidel Castro and given to Dragovich as a gift. Sending Mason to the same gulag work camp, Dragovich, Kravchenko, and Steiner would periodically experiment on him, attempting to implant mind control programming into him and set him loose as a double agent. Viktor Reznov, who had long been forgotten by Dragovich and his partners, would befriend Mason when he figured out what they were doing to him. Rather than helping or even trying to warn Mason, Reznov took him and turned him into his own weapon. Mason was given 3 targets by Dragovich, including US President Kennedy, but Reznov reprogrammed him and changed the targets to Kravchenko, Steiner, and Dragovich himself without Mason's knowledge. Reznov orchestrated a prison break with an 8-step plan that doubled as Mason's activation phrase and helped to get him out of the gulag. Ultimately, Reznov and everyone who tried to help him escape were all killed, but this was all part of the plan. Getting Mason out was the only thing that mattered. Now, free from the prison, Mason was returned to the CIA, where his reprogramming by Reznov filled him with a never-ending hatred for Dragovich, Kravchenko, and Steiner, a hatred that was written off by his teammates Frank Woods and Jason Hudson as being caused by his time in the gulag. But as Mason grew closer to his targets, he began hallucinating Reznov everywhere, guiding Mason and driving him towards revenge. Towards the end of the campaign, you find Steiner at a crucial moment. He is the last person alive capable of stopping a Nova 6 gas attack that will kill millions. The reprogramming causes Mason to hallucinate himself as Reznov, and he kills Steiner before he can give up the information needed to stop the Nova 6 attack.
You don't know what we did to you.
Mason, talk to me.
Your evil has claimed the lives of many good men. No longer.
Killing me will not stop Nova.
I do not care about no one. My name is Viktor Reznov. And I will have my revenge!
Mason, no!
I'm fine. Check Steiner.
He's dead. What about Reznov, the defector? We need to find him.
We won't. He was never here. I didn't believe it till I saw it with my own eyes. What did they do to you in Vorkuta, Mason?
Steiner dead. Mason's our only link to the numbers broadcasts.
Reznov's endless quest for bloodshed and revenge that we witnessed began in World at War, with the execution of unarmed soldiers potentially sealing the fate of millions. Fortunately, Mason is able to stop the gas attack and breaks free of the programming, killing Dragovich of his own accord. In Black Ops 2, Reznov's programming can resurface and force you to kill Kravchenko, ultimately bringing Reznov's mission to an end. There are a lot of similarities between these two characters, both surface level and much deeper. They're both highly decorated soldiers who are sent to a gulag, betrayed by a higher ranking official, and scarred by the death of their closest friend, and die branded as a traitor. But their positions in the world are very different. I think Price is considered across the board to be an admirable and heroic figure. Reznov, on the other hand, is much harder to define in that I really don't know what to call him. I guess he's an anti-hero, but in a much more literal sense. Recently, people call any fictional character who kills but is on the side of good an anti-hero, especially in comics. The Punisher, Red Hood, John Wick, because, I don't know, I guess killing is bad even if the people you're wiping out are like human traffickers and mass murderers. But in COD, everyone kills people, by the hundreds. It's a military shooter. Reznov is the good guy at the end of the day. His enemies are traitorous communist terrorists and former Nazis who plan to murder millions. but all of Reznov's actions are driven by selfishness and a personal vendetta, and nothing he does to accomplish these goals is really like noble actions. Reznov allows Steiner to break Mason's mind and then befriends him just so he can use him to exact his revenge. He then orchestrates a prison break that he knows will fail and result in the death of dozens of likely unfairly imprisoned people who believed in him, once again just so he can have his revenge. Finally, his programming causes Mason to kill Steiner, which nearly results in the deaths of millions. Sure, Reznov didn't exactly know that would happen, but it's been made clear he's willing to do anything and sacrifice anyone to make his enemies pay. I know for a fact that Reznov would let the entire world burn if it meant getting even with Dragovich. And this is carrying on the theme of the Russian campaign in World at War. If you want a breakdown on that, you should go watch the last video on my channel, I'll link it down below. But World at War is about the corrupting nature of revenge, as Reznov becomes consumed by bloodlust, executing unarmed Germans at every opportunity. To call back once again to that Price quote,
How quickly they forget that all it takes to change the course of history is the will of a single man.
Reznov does have an effect on the world as a whole. Without his reprogramming, Mason would have killed Kennedy and no one would have known about the Nova 6 attack. And I think what's really cool is that Reznov's hatred is so powerful, it transcends death and breaks the will of another man, forcing him to act in Reznov's interest. We see in Black Ops that the residual programming to kill JFK is different. He's being compelled by an order. But with Reznov, he actually wants to kill Dragovich and the others. His actions are literally driven by Reznov's hatred, and it overtakes it, making him act noticeably irrational. Everything about this is just incredibly well done. Price also gets it pretty rough in these games. Everyone he knows is murdered, from Soap to Gaz to Ghost. He even loses control of himself when Delta Force is killed. After his entire team is wiped out, he's almost immediately sent to a Russian gulag, and no, I don't think the Operation Kingfish short film that shows he was captured later is canon. Side tangent, but it's never referenced. Soap's journal says Price was in the gulag for 5 years, which would mean he was locked up as soon as COD 4 ended, and Soap gives him back his gun as soon as he sees him, clearly implying this was the first time he had seen him since the bridge. But despite all of this, Price never breaks or loses sight of himself. Even when he's hunted by his own government and has his name slandered before the entire world, he always stays on mission. Sure, killing Makarov is personal, but it's still the mission. He helps Delta Force find key figures and put a stop to the World War. Without him, things would have just continued to escalate. He does change the world, and despite all his sacrifice and everything he did, as far as we know, he dies being seen as a traitor. I know his fate on the roof is left open-ended, but I kind of choose to take it as him dying. I think it's more dramatic that way. Ultimately, everyone involved with the fight against Makarov and Zakhaev dies on both sides, and the world has a clean slate to build from. Anyways, that's gonna be it for me. Thanks for watching. If you're still here, hit like and subscribe. That would be a big help to me. I've got more stuff on the way. But regardless, appreciate anyone who stuck around, and that's gonna be it. Goodbye.